Well, howdy do everyone, and welcome back to the shop. Good to have you here today. Welcome to episode number 2 of the abandoned first generation Blazer. Like I said, good to have you here. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Episode number 1, which aired a couple of weeks ago, was basically a history lesson that got everyone up to speed on where we are now and the state that we have the Blazer in at this time. I say we, me and my head engineer and chief consultant, couldn't have done it without him. Most of episode number 1 was just me blabbing and kind of doing a voiceover on a bunch of videos that some of you probably had already seen anyway. And in retrospect, looking back over episode number 1, there was a lot of important things that I left out. So I'm going to fill in the gaps on that today, and then we're going to get into the Blazer proper toward the end of the video. Initially, I wanted this to be one of those 5-step rescue/revival programs that you see on YouTube that are so popular today. And by 5 steps, what I'm talking about is step number 1, you make sure the engine will turn over, and that's just the water pump there. But you make sure the engine's not locked up from setting for however many years. You make sure it'll turn over. Number 2 is ensuring proper fuel delivery to the motor. 2. Step number 3 is making sure there's plenty of fire through the distributor, spark plugs, and all that jazz. Step number 4 is getting the transmission going, and step number 5 is the brakes. Brakes. I don't know why brakes are always last. That doesn't make sense, but that's the way it goes. So who am I to rock the boat? So I was really excited to get my Blazer up here and get the 5-step program going on this little dude. So I got my big breaker bar and a good socket, and I put it on this bolt down here on the crankshaft, worked it back and forth, lubricated the cylinders, and before you know it, this motor was spinning over. So I was really proud of it. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is ensure that you have proper fuel delivery. Well, this old Holley carburetor is full of rust. It's full of mud dauber nest, and it's been sitting out in the weather for 23 years. But being the fine mechanic I am, I know how to fix these. Fixed. So with the fuel delivery system taken care of, I went to the next step, step number 3, energizing the electrical system in the car. I put a battery right here, hooked it all up, went in the cab and turned the key. Absolutely nothing happened. And I could not find 12 volts anywhere under the hood or anywhere inside the cab. So we had come to what's called an impasse. So at this point in the game, granted I'm not a mechanic, but it did not take a very intelligent person to realize that we weren't going to have one of those simple little 5-step rescue revival type programs on our hands here. That step number 3, energizing the electrical system, could very likely become our Waterloo here. But nevertheless, the problem was actually 2 problems. Problem number 1 was that a previous owner had butchered up the wiring harness under the hood, installing 2 electric cooling fans behind the radiator, installing an electric choke carburetor, installing a distributor that required extra wiring to it, lights, fog lights, and God only knows what else. And then there was a tremendous mess, still is, going down to the starter. Just a bundle of wires. I have no clue what they all are. But that was under the hood. Inside the cabin, under the dash, old Bubba looked like he had installed at least one aftermarket radio, an aftermarket tachometer, at least one CB. He had relocated the horn switch and put extra lights on it as well. And not only that, and reflecting back under the hood, he had changed the alternator to a more modern type without changing the wiring. And when he did, he fried the circuit board on the back of the instrument panel. Well, there's your problem right there. If you look at this date on here, April 29th, 1972, this is what a printed circuit looked like back in 1972. And that's just one part of a two-part problem that's preventing electricity from being distributed throughout the entire vehicle here. The second part has to do with an inherent design flaw. Thank you, General Motors, who basically left holes in this cowl panel big enough to throw a cat through, and that's what's supposed to be keeping leaves and twigs and debris out of this big cavity back here just below the windshield. And honestly, when I was first allowed to go in and see this vehicle up close and personal, this tree leaning over the hood kind of worried me just a little bit. And then I got just a little bit more worried when I saw this. And I was definitely becoming concerned when I saw this. And then I really got concerned when I realized this. That is inside the cab. This is the cowl panel right here. You can see all the way down. You can see daylight through it down there. We'll put this friendly little stick, and you should not be able to do that. See what we got there? That is not good. And you can see daylight coming in with several rusted out spots all the way across. And you see this piece of rebar I've got stuck in this rusted out hole right here. And that ran down right through here, which is exactly where the fuse block is. So water was running down here, rainwater running down here, running right on top of the fuse block. And over 23 years, that rainwater totally ruined the fuse block. And that's probably why we couldn't get power inside the cab. So by this time, I was starting to get a little bit of buyer's remorse, which was compounded when I got online and looked up what to look for when buying a 1968 through 72 Chevrolet truck. And they were talking about all the warnings, all the things you look out for, and it said number one thing is this right here. And they said, don't walk away from this deal, run away from this deal. So I wasn't too happy with that. I kept reading articles about this particular malady and the level of difficulty of the repairs involved. And they kept using phrases like prohibitively expensive and unrewardingly laborious, not for the faint of heart. And the one that kind of got me was deal killer. And the bad part about it is, of all the trucks that I looked at, the rust out places in mine were a lot worse than anything I saw online. So I did the right thing and bought $2,000 worth of sheet metal to fix this thing. And these are the two most important parts of the truckload of sheet metal that I bought. One of them is the lower cowl panel. Let me get it for you. This is the one that goes down underneath. And then this one, you can tell by looking at it, it is the upper cowl panel. In part 3 of this video series, I'm going to be going through here, drilling out all the spot wells, pulling these two panels off, more than likely having to remove the windshield too, because the lower windshield frame is also part of the lower inner cowl panel as well. And forgive me, I got a little bit ahead of myself there. When I saw all the pathology up here and realized what I was going to have to do to correct it, and once I made the decision to do that, I went ahead and just got into tear down mode. And being trained as a skilled surgeon, I relied on my delicate technique at removing a lot of these aftermarket components. Well, folks, that's about it from out here in the shop today. Thank you so much for dropping by today. Like I said, in the next video, I'm going to go in there and cut that whole cowl panel out, and I'm really looking forward to doing that, and I sure would appreciate it if you'd stop by and help me. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. God bless you all. I want you to always remember to love you. Bye-bye now. It is a rough life.